The wedding was only days away when someone walked into your soulmate's family home carrying a sealed DNA report, and the moment they placed it on the table, every conversation stopped. Your soulmate was told that marrying you would expose a truth the family could never recover from. Someone wanted that report to become the final reason your soulmate walked away from you forever. But they made one terrible mistake. They never expected the real DNA result to arrive. Listen carefully. Because what happened between those two reports didn't just expose a lie. It revealed how far someone had been willing to go to keep you out of your soulmate's future. Your soulmate had already made the decision. After all the confusion, distance, interference, and years of wondering whether the two of you would ever find your way back to each other, they were finally ready to stop running from what their heart had known for a long time. They wanted you. Not the person the family preferred. Not the easier choice. Not the relationship that looked perfect from the outside. They wanted the person whose absence had followed them into every quiet room, and that person was you. The family knew the decision was becoming serious. Conversations about marriage had already begun behind closed doors. Dates were being discussed. A ring had been chosen. Your soulmate had even told one trusted family member, "I'm not losing this person again." That sentence frightened someone. Because there was one person inside that circle who had spent years making sure you and your soulmate never discovered the entire truth about your separation. And now marriage threatened to uncover everything. So they created one final obstacle. A DNA report. It arrived inside a plain envelope with your soulmate's full name printed across the front. The person who delivered it didn't smile. They didn't explain much. They simply placed it down and said, "Before you marry that person, you need to see this." Your soulmate stared at the envelope. Their mother immediately became nervous. Another relative whispered, "Maybe we shouldn't do this tonight." But the person who brought the report insisted. No. They deserve to know before the marriage becomes official. Your soulmate opened it. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then your soulmate's face changed. The report appeared to connect an old family secret directly to you. Names were mentioned. Dates matched events from years ago. And at the bottom was a conclusion powerful enough to make the entire family question whether the marriage should continue. The person behind the report immediately started pushing. "You see now? This marriage has to stop." But your soulmate didn't answer. They read the pages again. Then again. Something didn't feel right. Because one date on that report contradicted something your soulmate personally remembered. And that tiny inconsistency changed everything. Your soulmate looked across the table and asked one question. "Where exactly did this DNA test come from?" Silence. The person who had been so confident only seconds earlier suddenly struggled to answer. Your soulmate asked again. This time harder. "Who ordered this test?" Their mother lowered her eyes. Someone stood up from the table. And the person holding the secret finally said, "That doesn't matter. The result is right there. But your soulmate pushed the report back across the table. No. If this report is going to decide whether I marry the person I love, then it matters more than anything. That night, your soulmate refused to cancel the marriage. Instead, they quietly arranged for another DNA test through an independent laboratory, without telling the person who had brought the first report. And don't skip what happened next, because someone inside the family realized exactly what your soulmate was doing. They panicked. Phone calls started happening late at night. Someone contacted an old family acquaintance who hadn't spoken to your soulmate in years. Another person suddenly began begging your soulmate to forget the entire situation and protect the family. But your soulmate had already understood something. If the first DNA report were completely genuine, nobody would be afraid of a second one. 3 days later, your soulmate received a call. The independent results were ready. They went alone to collect them. Your soulmate sat inside the car for several minutes with the sealed envelope resting in their hands. They knew whatever was inside could change the wedding, expose the family, and possibly rewrite everything they believed about the years they had spent apart from you. Finally, they opened it. Their eyes moved slowly across the page. Once. Twice. Then your soulmate whispered your name. Because the real result did not confirm the report that had been used to stop the marriage. It contradicted it. Completely. And there was something else. A detail inside the legitimate report pointed toward a truth nobody had expected, especially the person who had delivered the first envelope. Your soulmate immediately drove back to the family home. Everyone was called into the same room. The original DNA report was placed on one side of the table. The real result was placed beside it. Then your soulmate looked directly at the person who had tried to stop the marriage and said, "Now you're going to tell me why these two reports don't match." Nobody moved. Nobody defended them. Because for the first time, the family realized this had never really been about DNA. It had been about keeping you away. And when your soulmate revealed the final detail written inside the authentic report, their mother suddenly covered her mouth and began to cry. Because she recognized exactly what it meant. And she knew who had been hiding the truth all along. The voice on the other end remained silent for several painful seconds. Your soulmate could hear nervous breathing, but no explanation came. Finally, the person whispered, "Before I tell you anything, you need to understand something. The DNA report was only the last attempt. What happened between you and the person you love began long before that report ever existed." Your soulmate tightened their grip on the phone. "Then tell me everything." The person hesitated. "I can't do this over the phone." "Why?" "Because there are things your family never told you. And there is something I kept all these years because I knew eventually the truth would come looking for us." Your soulmate's mother immediately looked frightened. "What did they say?" she asked. Your soulmate put the phone on speaker. The voice continued. "Do you remember the night you were told that you had decided to leave and wanted no further contact? Your soulmate's eyes immediately filled with emotion. Of course they remembered. That night had changed everything. They had waited for you. They had checked their phone repeatedly. They had expected one final message, one explanation, anything that could help them understand why someone they loved so deeply would suddenly disappear. But nothing arrived. Or at least, that was what they had believed. The voice on the phone suddenly said, "There was a message." Your soulmate stopped breathing for a moment. Their mother covered her mouth. What? There was more than one. Your soulmate stood completely still. You're telling me they contacted me? Yes. How many times? The person hesitated again. Enough times that you would never have believed they abandoned you if you had received them. Your soulmate's eyes closed. That sentence hurt differently. Because suddenly years of heartbreak were being rewritten in seconds. Every night your soulmate had wondered why you never fought for the relationship. Every moment they had convinced themselves that you had forgotten them. Every relationship they had entered while secretly comparing someone else to you. It had all been built on a lie. Who stopped the messages? Your soulmate asked. Nobody answered immediately. Then the voice said a name. It was the same person sitting across the room. Your soulmate looked directly at them. Their face had gone pale. You intercepted the messages. I was trying to protect this family. Stop saying that. Your soulmate's voice shook the room. You don't destroy two people and call it protection. Their mother started crying again. But the confession wasn't finished. The person on the phone continued. The messages weren't the only thing. Your soulmate slowly turned back toward the phone. What else? A meeting. The room became silent again. You were supposed to meet you one final time before everything fell apart. They came. They waited. Your soulmate's face changed instantly. Because they remembered that day. They had been told you never showed up. They were there. Your soulmate whispered. Yes. For how long? Almost 2 hours. Your soulmate lowered their head. For years they had carried anger about that meeting. They had believed you deliberately left them waiting. But now they were discovering the exact opposite. You had been waiting too. Just somewhere else. Someone had deliberately given the two of you different locations. Your soulmate looked toward the person responsible. How could you do that? The person finally broke. Because everybody knew what would happen if you two saw each other that day. What would happen? You would have chosen you. Your soulmate stared at them. There it was. The truth. Not DNA. Not family honor. Not protection. Fear. Someone had been terrified that if your soulmate heard your voice, saw your face, or received your messages, they would choose you regardless of what anyone else wanted. So they removed the choice entirely. But don't skip what happened next. The person on the phone suddenly said something nobody expected. There is one more thing you need to know about the first DNA report. Your soulmate immediately looked toward the document. What? The person sitting in front of you didn't create that report alone. Your soulmate's mother stopped crying. Who helped them? A long silence followed. Then the voice answered. Someone connected to the marriage. That changed everything. Because this meant the attempt to stop your soulmate from marrying you wasn't only coming from the past. Someone involved in the present had participated too. Your soulmate immediately asked, "Who?" I have proof. Messages. Dates. Copies of what they discussed. But I'm not giving you a name until I show you everything. Where are you? 20 minutes away. Your soulmate grabbed their keys. Their mother tried to stop them. Please be careful. We don't know how many people are involved. Your soulmate turned around. I've spent enough years being afraid of the truth. Then they looked at the real DNA report sitting beside the false one. And nobody is deciding my future again. 20 minutes later, your soulmate arrived at a small house they hadn't visited in years. The door opened before they could knock. The person from the phone stood there holding a thick folder. Their eyes were already filled with tears. I should have given you this years ago. Your soulmate entered. The folder was placed on the table. Inside were printed messages, copies of old letters, photographs, and records connected to the original separation. But one photograph immediately caught your soulmate's attention. It showed you standing outside a building years earlier. Waiting. On the back, someone had written a date. It was the exact date your soulmate had been told you never came. Your soulmate's hands began shaking. You actually came. The person across from them nodded. And that isn't the worst part. They reached deeper into the folder and removed one final document. Your soulmate recognized the format immediately. Another DNA record. Older than both reports currently sitting at the family home. Your soulmate looked confused. What is this? The person took a long breath. This is the document everyone has been afraid you would eventually find. Your soulmate turned it over. And before they could even read the result, they saw something handwritten across the top. A name. A name that had never been mentioned during the entire argument. Your soulmate looked up in disbelief. Why is their name on this? The person's eyes filled with tears. Because the secret was never really about you. They pushed the document closer. It was about someone inside your own family. And when your soulmate finally read the original result, they realized the false DNA report had been created for one terrifying reason. To make sure your soulmate blamed you before they discovered who the real family secret belonged to, your soulmate stared at the original DNA record until the words began to blur through the tears gathering in their eyes. Suddenly, every strange warning, every intercepted message, every lie about you, and every desperate attempt to stop the marriage started connecting into one disturbing picture. The DNA story had never begun with you. Your name had simply been placed in the middle of a secret that belonged to someone else. Your soulmate slowly looked up. "Tell me whose secret this really is." The person across the table lowered their eyes. Your family spent years protecting one person. When you started talking about marrying you, they became terrified that old records would surface. So instead of allowing you to discover what really happened, someone decided to make you look like the problem. Your soulmate felt anger rising again. "Who?" The person pointed toward the handwritten name on the old record. Your soulmate read it carefully. They recognized it immediately. This was someone who had been present during important family decisions for years. Someone who had repeatedly warned your soulmate that reconnecting with you would bring trouble. Someone who had acted supportive while quietly encouraging distance. Your soulmate whispered, "They knew." They didn't just know. The person opened another section of the folder. They helped build the lie. Inside were copies of old messages. One message discussed making sure your letter never reached your soulmate. Another mentioned changing the location of that final meeting. Then your soulmate reached a message written years later. The words made their stomach turn. "If they ever find each other again, we'll need something stronger." Your soulmate read it twice. Something stronger. Now they understood exactly what that meant. The DNA report. Years earlier, separating the two of you had required hidden letters and manipulated meetings. But this time your soulmate was older. Stronger. More certain. They were preparing to marry you. A simple rumor wouldn't work anymore. So someone needed evidence powerful enough to frighten the entire family. Your soulmate asked quietly, "Was the first DNA report completely fabricated?" The person shook their head. That's what made it believable. Pieces of real information were mixed with altered details. Names were moved. Dates were changed. The conclusion was presented in a way designed to make you appear connected to something that had nothing to do with you. Your soulmate closed their eyes. Someone hadn't merely lied. They had carefully constructed a story. And they had nearly succeeded. But then your soulmate remembered something. The real test. They immediately stood up. If the independent result cleared you, then why was everyone so terrified of it? The person looked directly at them. Because that result doesn't only prove the first report was misleading. A pause. It can also help identify where the hidden family connection actually leads. Your soulmate froze. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying someone tried so hard to point the DNA story toward you that they accidentally created a path back toward themselves. That was the mistake. The one nobody had anticipated." Your soulmate grabbed the folder and drove straight back to the family home. This time, they weren't arriving confused. They were arriving with evidence. The moment they walked through the door, everyone could see something had changed. Your soulmate placed the thick folder on the table. Then they put the photograph beside it. The photograph of you waiting at the meeting years earlier. Their mother picked it up. Her face collapsed. You came. Your soulmate answered softly. Yes. You came. We were both there that day. Someone just made sure we were waiting in different places. Their mother began crying. Your soulmate turned toward the person who had delivered the false DNA report. Tell everyone. The person remained silent. Tell them why you were so desperate to stop this marriage. Still nothing. Your soulmate opened the folder. I have the messages. That changed everything. The person's confidence disappeared. Your soulmate read one message aloud. Then another. Nobody interrupted. With every message, the family learned that the separation they had accepted as unfortunate had actually been engineered. The missed meeting wasn't an accident. The lost letters weren't an accident. The years of silence weren't an accident. And the DNA report certainly wasn't an accident. Finally, the person broke. All right. Everyone turned. They were crying now. I did what I thought I had to do. Your soulmate stepped closer. You stole years from us. I was afraid. Of what? The person looked around the room. Then toward your soulmate's mother. And finally said, of what would happen if the original DNA record became public. Your soulmate placed that old record on the table. This one? The person's face went pale. They hadn't expected your soulmate to have it. Where did you get that? It doesn't matter anymore. Your soulmate pushed it forward. What matters is why your name appears in the records connected to it. The person began shaking. Their mother whispered, please. Just tell the truth. For the first time, the person stopped fighting. They sat down. Then they admitted something nobody expected. Years ago, the family had discovered a hidden biological connection involving someone extremely close to them. The information threatened relationships, inheritance expectations, and the reputation of people who had spent decades pretending nothing had happened. And somehow, you had unknowingly come close to discovering part of that history. Not because you were searching for it. Not because you wanted anything from the family. You had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time and had seen something that made you ask one innocent question. That question terrified them. Because if you stayed close to your soulmate, eventually the truth might surface. So separating you became easier than confronting the secret. Your soulmate's eyes filled with tears. You destroyed our relationship because you might discover something. The person whispered, we thought it would protect everyone. Your soulmate shook their head. No. You protected a lie. Nobody spoke. Then your soulmate's mother suddenly remembered something. She hurried toward an old cabinet and removed a small locked case. I was told never to open this unless the person who gave it to me passed away. The room went still. The person who had confessed immediately stood. No. Your soulmate looked at them. What's inside? Nothing you need to see. That answer was enough. Their mother opened the case. Inside were several photographs, an old handwritten statement, and one sealed laboratory document. Your soulmate recognized the laboratory name. It matched the independent facility connected to the authentic records. Their mother unfolded the handwritten statement first. Halfway through reading it, she started crying. Your soulmate took the page from her hands. The statement had been written years ago by someone who knew the original truth. And near the bottom was a sentence that changed the entire story. If this secret is ever used to separate those two, give them the real result and tell them they were never the reason this family was afraid. Your soulmate couldn't speak. Even years ago, someone had known this might happen. Someone had known you could eventually become the scapegoat. Your soulmate opened the sealed laboratory document. They compared it with the real result they had received only days earlier. The information aligned. The first report had twisted the story. The authentic records told something completely different. Your soulmate looked around the room and said, "The wedding is not being cancelled." Nobody argued. The person I love is not responsible for this family's secret. Their mother nodded through tears. Then your soulmate said something even stronger. And after everything I've learned tonight, I'm not waiting any longer to tell you the truth. They picked up their phone. Your number appeared on the screen. But before they could call, the front door suddenly opened. Everyone turned. A family member who had been absent during the entire confrontation walked inside. They saw the document spread across the table. Their face immediately changed. Then they looked directly at your soulmate and whispered, "You found the original DNA result." Your soulmate stared at them. "How did you know about it?" The person slowly closed the door behind them. Because unlike everyone else in that room, they weren't shocked by what had been discovered. They had been expecting this moment. And then they said the one sentence that made your soulmate lower the phone. "Before you call you. There is one final truth about that DNA result you need to hear from me." Your soulmate slowly lowered the phone. The room had already survived enough revelations for one night, but something about the expression on this family member's face made everyone understand that the deepest truth had still not been spoken. They weren't angry. They weren't defensive. They looked exhausted, as if they had carried this secret for years and had finally reached the moment when hiding it was no longer possible. Your soulmate stepped closer. "Then say it. No more hidden envelopes. No more missing messages. No more protecting people from consequences. Tell me what I need to know before I call you." The family member looked at the authentic DNA result lying on the table. Then they said, the person who manipulated the first report knew that another result existed. That is why everything happened so quickly. They needed you to believe their version before you ever had a reason to search for the original. Your soulmate looked toward the person who had already confessed. They couldn't meet their eyes, but why use you? Your soulmate demanded. Why drag the person I love into a family secret that had nothing to do with them? The answer came quietly. Because you were the one person they knew you would choose over this family. That sentence silenced everyone. The family member continued. They tried rumors before. They tried distance. They intercepted messages. They changed the location of your meeting. But after all those years, you still found your way back to you. When marriage became real, they realized emotional manipulation wasn't enough anymore. So they created something that looked scientific, your soulmate whispered. Yes. Something official. Something frightening. Something that could be placed on a table and treated as unquestionable truth. The family member nodded. They believed that if the word DNA appeared on a laboratory document, nobody would ask enough questions. But your soulmate had asked. One wrong date had exposed everything. Your soulmate picked up the false report again. For the first time, they weren't looking at it with fear. They were looking at it as evidence. The family member moved closer and pointed toward a small reference number near the bottom. Look at this. Your soulmate compared it with the authentic report. The numbers were different. What does that mean? It means the first document wasn't simply misunderstood. Someone deliberately altered information before it reached you. The person responsible finally whispered, "I never thought you would order another test." Your soulmate turned toward them. And suddenly the entire reason the plan had collapsed became painfully simple. They had underestimated your soulmate's love for you. They expected fear to win. They expected family pressure to win. They expected one terrifying document to erase everything your soulmate felt. Instead, your soulmate had questioned it. Because something inside them refused to believe that the story of you could be destroyed by a few pages nobody was willing to explain. Their mother began crying again. I should have questioned things years ago. Your soulmate looked at her. We all should have. Then their voice softened. But I'm done losing time. Your soulmate picked up the phone again. Before dialing, however, the family member who had just arrived reached into their bag. There's something else. They removed a small envelope. Unlike the others, this one had never been opened. Your soulmate recognized the handwriting immediately. It was your handwriting. Their breathing changed. Where did you get this? The family member swallowed hard. You wrote it years ago. Your soulmate stared at them. You had another letter from you? Yes. Why wasn't it given to me? Because I was told giving it to you would destroy the family. Your soulmate almost laughed, but there was too much pain behind it. The family survived. They took the envelope. Our relationship didn't. Nobody had an answer. Your soulmate carefully opened the letter. The paper had aged. The handwriting had faded slightly. But your words were still there. You had written that you didn't understand why everything was suddenly being pulled apart. You had written that you had tried to meet. You had written that you had tried calling. And most painfully, you had written that if your soulmate truly wanted you gone, you would respect that decision, but you needed to hear it directly from them. Your soulmate stopped reading. Tears fell onto the page. Because they had never made that decision. Someone else had made it for them. The final lines were even harder. You had written that despite everything happening around you, part of you still believed your soulmate would eventually discover the truth. And if that day ever came, you hoped they would understand one thing. You had never stopped caring. Your soulmate pressed the letter against their chest. Years of anger suddenly had nowhere to go. They weren't angry with you anymore. They were grieving the time that had been stolen. The birthdays missed. The conversations that never happened. The ordinary mornings you could have shared. The years when both of you believed the other had chosen silence. Your soulmate looked around the room. This ends tonight. Then they turned toward the person who had brought the false DNA report. You wanted this document to stop me from marrying you. The person said nothing. But it did the opposite. Your soulmate placed the real result on top of the false one. It showed me exactly who I should stop listening to. The room became silent. Your soulmate's mother stepped forward. What are you going to do? Your soulmate looked at the phone. I'm going to tell you everything. And the wedding? Your soulmate didn't hesitate. The wedding continues. Those 3 words changed the room. No debate. No family vote. No permission. The person who had tried to stop the marriage finally understood they had lost control. But don't skip this part, because your soulmate wasn't finished. They looked directly at everyone and said, "Nobody contacts you before I do. Nobody tries to explain this story for me. Nobody hides another document. If there is anything else connected to our separation, it comes onto this table tonight." For several seconds, nobody moved. Then your soulmate's mother slowly walked toward another room. She returned holding a small box. Your soulmate stared at it. "What is that?" "Something I should have given you a long time ago." Inside were old photographs. A few receipts. Several handwritten notes. And at the bottom, a small object wrapped carefully in cloth. Your soulmate unwrapped it. Their eyes widened. It was something connected to you. Something they had believed was lost years ago. Their mother whispered, "You left this behind the last time they came looking for you." Your soulmate looked up sharply. The last time? Their mother nodded. You came here once after the two of you were separated. Your soulmate couldn't believe what they were hearing. You came to this house? Yes. And nobody told me? Tears ran down her face. I was told you already knew. Your soulmate closed their eyes. Another lie. Another stolen moment. Then their mother said something that changed the entire mood again. But you didn't come alone. Your soulmate opened their eyes. What do you mean? There was someone with you. The person who had manipulated the DNA report suddenly looked terrified. Your soulmate noticed immediately. Who was it? Their mother looked toward them. Then toward the old photographs. I never knew their name. She reached into the box and removed one final photograph. But I took this picture because something about that visit frightened me. Your soulmate took it. There you were. Years younger. Standing outside the family home. And beside you was another person. Your soulmate recognized them instantly. Their hands began trembling. Because the person standing next to you in that photograph was someone who had repeatedly claimed they had never met you. Someone who had helped convince your soulmate that you disappeared voluntarily. Someone who had been involved from the very beginning. Your soulmate looked across the room. Why were you with them that night? The person's face went completely pale. They tried to leave. Your soulmate stepped between them and the door. No. Then your soulmate placed the photograph beside the real DNA result. You're going to tell me what happened that night. The person looked at everyone in the room. And finally realized there was nowhere left to hide. Their voice broke. All right. But once I tell you why you came here that night, you're going to understand why everyone became terrified of the two of you getting married. Your soulmate stared at them. Tell me. The person took a shaking breath. Then they revealed that you had arrived that night carrying information connected to the original family record. Information you had never intended to use against anyone. You only wanted answers. But one question you asked had accidentally come dangerously close to exposing the entire secret. And that was the night someone made the decision that you had to disappear from your soulmate's life. Your soulmate stood frozen. Because the DNA report delivered before the wedding hadn't started this story. It was simply the newest version of a plan that had begun years ago. And now your soulmate finally knew enough to ask the question everyone had spent years avoiding. What exactly did you discover that night? The person looked toward the authentic DNA record. Then they whispered. Something that proves the biggest lie in this family still hasn't been exposed. And suddenly everyone realized the real DNA result had one final secret left inside it. Your soulmate stood in the middle of that room holding the real DNA result in one hand and your old letter in the other, realizing that almost every painful chapter between the two of you had been shaped by somebody else's fear. The family member finally pointed toward the original record and admitted, "You discovered that the dates in our family story didn't match the official records. That was all you had discovered years ago. You hadn't threatened anyone. You hadn't demanded money. You hadn't tried to expose the family. You had simply asked why one name, one date, and one biological connection appeared differently across two documents." But that innocent question had terrified the people protecting the secret. They feared that if you remained beside your soulmate, eventually the entire truth would surface. So they separated you. They hid your letters. They changed the location of your final meeting. They convinced your soulmate that you had chosen to disappear. And years later, when the two of you found your way back to each other and began talking about marriage, they tried one final desperate move. The false DNA report. Your soulmate looked directly at the person responsible. "You almost made me lose you twice." The person lowered their head. "But you didn't," their mother whispered through tears. Your soulmate looked toward her. "No. Because this time I questioned the story before I questioned the person I love." Then your soulmate picked up the authentic result. The final comparison confirmed what mattered most. You were never the problem. The frightening family connection had been deliberately redirected toward your name to protect somebody else's secret. And now the people who had spent years hiding it had finally been exposed by the very DNA evidence they tried to use against you. Your soulmate immediately called you. When you answered, they couldn't speak for several seconds. Then came the words you had waited years to hear. "I know the truth." Silence followed. Your soulmate's voice began trembling. "I know you came looking for me. I know you wrote. I know you waited for me that day. And I know you never abandoned me." Neither of you needed to explain the pain. You had both lived it. Then your soulmate said something nobody in that family could ever take back. "I'm sorry I believed their silence instead of searching harder for your truth." They looked around the room. Everyone was listening. And your soulmate continued. "They tried to use a DNA report to stop me from marrying you." A pause. "But the real result gave me another reason to choose you." Their mother began crying. Your soulmate walked toward the table where the false report still remained. They tore it in half. Not because tearing paper could erase the past, but because it could symbolize the end of allowing somebody else's deception to control the future. Then your soulmate told you, "The wedding is still happening. No hesitation. No permission requested. No family approval needed. I already lost too many years with you. I'm not giving away another day." For the first time in years, the truth belonged to both of you. The family secret could no longer stand between you. The hidden letters had been found. The missed meeting had been explained. The false DNA report had been exposed. And the real result had done exactly what nobody expected. It didn't end the marriage. It ended the lie. Your soulmate's mother walked closer and quietly said, "Bring you home." Your soulmate smiled through tears. Because those words would have been impossible years earlier. But tonight everything had changed. The person they had once been pressured to forget was now the person they were refusing to lose. And before ending the call, your soulmate gave you one final promise. No more secrets. No more people speaking for us. No more letting fear decide what happens between you and me. This time, I choose you knowing the whole truth. And somewhere beneath all the shock, regret, and years of stolen time was something stronger than the DNA report anyone had placed on that table. A love that had survived being misunderstood. A connection that had survived years of silence. And two people who finally understood that their story had never ended. It had simply been interrupted by people who were afraid of what would happen if the truth ever brought them back together. Now the truth had arrived. And instead of stopping the wedding, it finally cleared the way for your soulmate to marry the person they had never truly stopped loving. You.